Hello, I'm Jonathan Canning, Director of Curatorial Affairs at the Hyde Collection in Glens Falls, New York. So welcome to the music room in Hyde House. I'm here today cleaning, and so I can introduce the reveal to our Fill the Frame game this week in person. And it's the painting and the young man just over my shoulder there, a portrait of a young man by a Raphael or a follower of Raphael. That is a matter for the Renaissance art historians to settle. So here I am standing in front of the portrait. Mrs. Hyde acquired this painting believing it to be by the great High Renaissance artist Raphael, who died 500 years ago this year. Scholars have, in subsequent decades, questioned that attribution. And very often modern scholars go by what the great Renaissance art historian and art advisor Bernard Berenson thought about this painting. Berenson was the advisor behind many of the purchases by Isabella Stewart Gardner for her museum in Boston. And early on, he advised her not to acquire this painting. He said he'd seen it, he didn't believe it was by Raphael, and he attributed it to a follower of Raphael, somebody who painted in Raphael's style, Rodolfo Ghirlandaio. And so that name was often brought up by modern art historians. Berenson did advise the Hydes on one purchase that they made, and that's the Botticelli Annunciation that sits on a table in Hyde House just steps from this supposed Raphael. What many art historians don't know is that some 35 years after Berenson advised Mrs. Gardner not to buy this painting, he advised the Whitneys, a New York family, not one, I think, related to the Whitneys that the Hyde's own daughter, Mary Van Ness, married into later. But there was a Whitney collector in New York City who bought this painting, and Berenson advised him that it was indeed a Raphael. He admitted he'd changed his mind. The painting over the decades has been analysed by conservators, and they, while they can't say definitively if it's Raphael or not, certainly all agree that it is of the period. The right sort of pigments are to be found in an analysis of the paint that's used, the way the paint was laid down, all of that makes sense for an early 16th century portrait. Conservators at some point removed this painting, which was originally painted on panel, and applied it to canvas. So there are some sort of, there's evidence that's been lost because of that. One thing that has been discovered recently is that the figure was painted not against the plain background that you see, but against a landscape. And this is a feature of Raphael's portraits painted before he moves to Rome. So in the very early 1500s, 1505, 1506, up to about 1510. And then when he's in Rome, he paints his portrait figures against a plain background. There's evidence that there was a landscape behind this figure and it was painted over. So perhaps Raphael reworked the painting, taking it, if Raphael was the painter, taking it to Rome and reworking it there, or somebody following the changes in Raphael's style while painting in his manner updated the painting. We're not sure. The identity of the sitter is unknown, though he does look rather like a member of the Doni family, and there are portraits of Agnolo Doni and his wife in the collection of the Pitti Palace in Florence. As for the frame, this too is suspicious to me. In style, it is Venetian Baroque. So it's 100 years younger than the painting, so clearly not the original frame. The seashells rather gives it away that it's from Venice as opposed to Florence, and Raphael never worked in Venice. And you'll see that if we move in for details, you can see holes. So it would suggest evidence of woodworm. Although in most instances, these holes are limited to the rather plain element in the frame there. You don't see holes that go through or have any depth to them in the molded sections of the frame in too many places. And looking very carefully at the holes, they're all rather clean on the inside, the edges. So I suspect this is a Baroque frame. So I suspect this is a Baroque revival frame that's been treated to look older than it really is. Something else that I'm suspicious of is if you look at these vertical cracks, I think for a frame of the period you would have seen angled mitre lines run from the outer edge to the inner edge of the frame, and that it would originally have been one piece of wood. And clearly we've got three elements here, and it's just a little, that flat zone where I think they've manufactured wormholes, just it looks a little too flat and too modern to my eye. So I think this is a Baroque Renaissance, I think this is a Baroque revival frame, deliberately antiqued or aged to make you think that it's authentic. So lots of questions still to be resolved about this portrait, though we do know, we're confident that it is an early 16th century portrait by either Raphael or somebody working very closely in his style, perhaps of a member of the Doni family in Florence, but refamed in a later revival frame. So there we are, from everyone at the Hyde to you. Until next time, stay well and be safe. Bye.